Hi, and welcome to this little part. We're trying to make a summary and ending to the current series we're working on with Lifelover. With me, Kim, and Johan, whereas some of you may know him.
1853.
Yes, indeed. So, for some of you who might have missed the previous videos, we have several parts where we're talking about some history of Lifelover and our lyrics, our introduction and involvement in the band, and many other interesting, funny or unfunny or just generally fantastic things that we have experienced over the years.
Various topics.
Yes. So, something that we haven't talked a lot about, or that haven't been covered without going to details too much, is like youth and inspirations and different things that we can connect ourselves to before Lifelover. So, for example, when it comes to you and your experiences in like alternative or extreme music, as some may call it, what would you say introduced you to like the world of or subculture of black metal here in Sweden? Because it's very pronounced here compared to other countries.
Well, I guess black metal in general, it was a friend that showed me, well, some song of some band. I can't remember which band or which song, but it really got me somehow. And from there on, I started to get involved within the subculture of black metal. And it went very well with my, at the time, view of life or existence, that I felt sort of a hatred towards, not everything, but towards a lot of things. And it became a natural way of exploring oneself, as you do in your adolescence.
But would you connect it more to like misanthropy or nihilism or something else on a spiritual plane?
Misanthropy more than anything, because I've never seen myself as a nihilist, because I do believe in something. But it kind of confirmed that my view of humanity wasn't that incorrect as I might have thought of it otherwise. It gave me the gratification of, well, people suck. And I'm not totally wrong about that, so to say. And of course it became, you can get too involved in things. And it wasn't that it was everything I was, but well, in the end I made something out of it, and I actually contributed to it, and I'm glad for that. But at that point, being young, it became very important for me.
Yeah, but I think you were still a teenager when you joined Lifelover, right?
Yeah, I wasn't even 20. I think I was about 18.
Yeah, because I think one of the first time we met was because I was the only one over 20, and I bought strong beer that you and Fix could buy from me and B.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds great. I think it was late high school, so I should have been around 18.
And what other memories do you have of being in Stockholm around that time? Because I think that's very different from my experiences.
Well, yeah, I grew up in Stockholm, and I do like some parts of it when it comes to certain people and certain places.
And every suburb is very different. It could just as well be other cities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the inner city of Stockholm is something I've always loathed. And I still do, because I can't really be in the central parts. It's too hectic. And I moved away from Stockholm when I was 24, I think. Yeah. And it was for a reason. And
I think it was around the konkurs era, kind of.
no, around sjukdom, right before sjukdom, I think.
Really?
Yeah, quite not that long.
It feels like it was further away than that.
I can't remember though.
Because sjukdom is pretty close to now compared to konkurs.
I'd say it was
It's
about
pre-
10 years ago.
Yeah, so that's still in that area, but
Somewhere in between.
it feels like it was more years than 10 that you were studying in Lund.
I can't remember. I can go over my school documents or something to confirm it later.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I had to move away because even back then, before Lifelover, the city sort of consumed me. It felt almost cancerous. And for me, it was probably not the best place to grow up, but at the same time, I can't really, or I haven't been to any other place that would have been better. But I felt very misplaced. And at the same time, it's a big enough city for a fucking misfit to find this place.
Yeah, it's plenty of
For the
space.
better and worse, because that led to some self-destructive behaviors and habits, of course.
Yeah, it doesn't help that you have friends that indulge in those vices either.
Nah, there are plenty of them.
Mm-hmm.
Some are still around.
Yeah.
And others aren't, sadly. But yeah, it kind of fueled. It all went together. The hatred of life or people, the bad habits, and being in an environment where there's always others with those habits,
Yeah.
and the self-destructive way of life. And for the better and the worse, of course, I'm still here. I'm still breathing, so it can't be that bad. But
It's all about perspective.
I'd probably, if I'd had to choose, I'd probably choose to have been born somewhere else and grew up somewhere else. But at the same time, I'm very glad I grew up in Stockholm, because I made some very interesting and interesting connections during the years, or over the years. So yeah, how about you? Your childhood and or adolescence in Stockholm?
Well, I don't have a lot of memories of Stockholm when it comes to adolescence, because, of course, I grew up in the countryside of the west and the south. And my cousins are from Stockholm, but we're pretty estranged because my father and his sister don't really get along. But yeah, of course I have memories of being with them and meeting them and visiting them several times during my youth and childhood. And sometimes I miss them, but I have also tried to contact them later, and they have met me with complete lack of any interest. So from my perspective, they might just as well not exist, because it's no difference to me. And of course I've been to Stockholm over the years after that, and like in my earlier teen years I've been, of course, to some concerts, and met different people or stayed with friends to my mother and things like that. I don't know how you managed to do that in the kitchen, but
Is it from the kitchen that sounds?
yeah, it's disturbing me. So I will turn it off, but you should tell our friends and fans and followers something more. I can't tell anything good about my teenage years, but maybe you can tell them something about yourself before you joined Lifelover or something like that.
I can try.
Yeah.
As I mentioned in one of our previous videos, is that I became a member in Lifelover by coincidence, showing Jonas some poems. And when I was younger, quite early, I began writing a lot. And poetry and literature has always been close to heart. And when it comes to, well, different forms of art in a broader sense, I'd say as a to connect to my being discussed by Stockholm is that I, compared to Kim, I never had to travel to go to any concerts, and that's something I, when growing up, almost took for granted. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think I ever really traveled to that many concerts, as in comparison to Kim, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, being surrounded by the possibility to attend different
Cultural events.
yeah,
or,
exactly, like art shows or concerts or whatever.
Yeah.
That can sort of help me develop
international music and different genres of music.
Exactly, and that helped me to develop, especially when it comes to writing, because you had these influences all around you all the time, and that's the beauty, or something I at least got from growing up in a bigger town or smaller city or whatever it's called, Stockholm. For the better and the worse, of course. How about you when it comes to influences or ideas by your surroundings?
For me, it's always been about nature, because I've always been surrounded by the countryside and the forests. And I never really got along with people, so I very early on I started to not going to school, instead being at home. And for anything that I needed to learn or take tests in when it came to the school, it was easier for me to just get the books from school and go to the library. Because the moment that they taught me how to read and write, which is usually between 6 and 8 years old, from that age and onwards, I was pretty much self-sufficient, because they taught me everything I needed to know that they could teach me. After that, it was my own responsibility to do with that what I can do. How about you when it comes to the education system? I know you have a different background than me.
Well, yeah, I'm quite the opposite in that way as well. I went to elementary school, of course, then high school, and then I studied at university, some different academic fields. I started out with theoretical philosophy for 1.5 years, I think, and then I studied journalism for a year, and then I worked some menial jobs for a while, and then I got a bachelor's degree in informatics, which is kind of system development. um, and it's not. I don't really work exactly with that today, but yeah, I think it comes very much from my family. That's education is important, but I did it for myself because I tried to find something that I was interested enough to study and actually consider as a, not necessarily a career, but to has as a day job or whatever to call it.
Yeah.
For me, education all in all isn't that important because it's, as you said, it's what you do with it. It was what you use it for. I know several people working as programmers, for instance, who don't have any academic background. They're just very good at what they do.
Yeah.
And if reading and writing skills are enough for it to develop as for you to develop as what you want to be, I don't frown upon that. I think the more you do with the less academic background, the more impressive it is.
To some extent, perhaps, but also in my case, it's not really a choice. 'Cause I never really wanted to be an artist or musician. It was just something that was given to me, and I had to act upon that. And
It's a calling, not a choice. I'd
yeah,
say.
definitely. And it's not connected. It's not connected to language only how you use it. Once again, like what was said before, that it's about the tool and how you use it. And of course, that's one of the only negatives I can find about being like from a smaller town in the countryside, that it's not that I personally was not interested in getting a deeper or higher education, but I was misinformed and uneducated in my own possibilities. I was unaware what I could achieve if I pursued different paths. And that's the teacher's job. But we had such a bad school system and so few teachers that were actually educated or equipped for their actual work, that I was just completely unaware of what possibilities were available for me if I would pursue different paths. So, of course, for me, the easiest way was to completely avoid it.
I can understand
Yeah,
that.
because it seemed like a waste of time.
For me, it was. I shared that opinion in many ways when I was around that age, but I had, luckily, in elementary school, a math teacher and a physics teacher that was really, well, motivating and encouraging. And
Did he keep his pants high and tight, or
she did.
awesome?
I can't remember her
That's
last name.
such a
but,
classic physics teacher.
Veronica was a good teacher, and
Like our teacher, his pants were up here.
and balls tucked in. No, never mind.
You'll never know.
Anyhow, when I started high school, I had this, and that's very much how I got into writing. It was we had this teacher. I think her name was Linda, in Swedish and English, who was. I wrote short stories and poems long before that, but it was kind of controversial maybe because of explicit violence and sexual nature and shit like that. She could kind of see beyond that and see how I used the language, and was even though they maybe should have reacted on the content, but could see beyond the content. And those teachers are probably very few and far around, but luckily
Probably.
at least some of you have or had them. So yeah, for everyone studying to be a teacher out there, I hope you do a good job.
Yeah, it can have very different results.
Do you have any like other main influences in any specific like form of art that you would like to discuss? I know I've talked a lot about literature, for instance, William Burroughs. And do you have anything like some author, artist, musician that really influenced you?
Not really influenced, but when it comes to how I view myself, or something that has helped me to have a more forgiving or understanding perspective on humanity and society, and to be less misanthropic. Like in my younger years, writers like Nietzsche or de Sade made me very satanic and misanthropic, but you can find a lot of wonderful understanding and love in their texts. But then over the years, with more exploration, authors that really made me rethink my values, once again was de Sade, because he even though it's very rough and dirty, his language, there is a lot of beauty in his stories too, and many valuable lessons. But more than de Sade, I think Sartre is a very good author. He has a lot of interesting things to tell people. But also one of our own countrymen, Emanuel Swedenborg. His works on spirituality, meditation, and spirituality without actually being connected to a religion. I didn't have to be Christian or satanic or something else to pursue those paths. And I think that's really important and beautiful. So how about you when it comes to philosophy and religion and spirituality?
Well, I share your fascination with Nietzsche, of course, or not, of course.
He was an amazing man.
Um,
To the extent available at that time, he was
Sort of, yeah.
limited by his own time.
And what I like about him, or his ideas, is that the freedom, that you can break free from everything if you do it the right way. And of course you can misinterpret him how much you want, as some do. but people like to misinterpret things in a way. So and now the freedom to break free from everything, to break free from this existence, with which goes very well with how my spiritual view of life, sort of, it goes well together. And then I'd say philosophers like Hegel had made quite an impact. The Sartre as well, of course. I wouldn't call the Sade a philosopher, but of course he made an impact on me, especially
It depends on how you read it.
The 120 Days of Sodom, for instance, is really a study of evil. And,
yeah, but if you read Justine,
yeah, that's the opposite.
That's very spiritual and philosophical.
Yeah, in comparison.
To me, that's totally an overindulgent form of Satanism.
Could be. That's one way to see it, and I don't disagree. And then, of course, Aristotle and Plato has made huge influences on me when it comes to, how to say, view the basic aspects of life.
And like morality and justice.
Morality and justice for once, even though I not necessarily share those ideas, but very much when it comes to perception, how to see things. And I could be name dropping philosophers for hours, but I won't do that. I don't want to. Never mind.
Sure.
Regarding music, do you have any bands that meant a lot for you when it comes to forming you as a person?
Not really. Because to me, I've always heard music in nature. To me, the best way to get into something is to have complete, or as close as possible to silence. That's when I truly hear the music that the world has to offer me. So through emptiness and silence is where I find that. And of course, I grew up with composers like Kraftwerk and things like that. And my mother is an old synth or goth person. So yeah, things like Kraftwerk is definitely very important for me, how I view music and composition. That's the first band I can think of.
For me, it would be psychedelic rock, such as Love. My dad showed me all this kind of strange music growing up, and that it made some impact, I guess. And then, of course, bands I've discovered on my own that will always be not necessarily an influence, but something I always tend to fall back on, like Aphex Twin and Radiohead and Joy Division. It's bands that will always be there. And Bethlehem, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely, but that was later years.
Yeah. I did, Bethlehem I didn't discover until I was like 16, 17, 18, something. And it was... yeah, it's still one of the few black metal bands I still listen to. Um, but yeah, once again, I could name drop several bands. It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
But there's... most genres have something to offer. And most things that you are offered, you turn away. But some stick with you, I guess.
Probably and hopefully. But that doesn't mean that we don't care or pay attention to the questions you ask us. If you feel that we haven't answered something you wondered about,
Write comments.
yeah, write us again, because the more of you that ask us about different things, then the more we will think about it and find good answers to that. Because we enjoy having meetings like this and discussions. So that's why, as always, we thank you for listening and watching. And as always, write anything you want in the comments and let us know if there is something you want to know more about. And we are more than happy to think about it and make more videos like this.
Till next time.
Till next time, take care, and thank you so much for coming here.
A pleasure, as always.
A true pleasure. See ya.